Behold, trapped in a hellscape of their own invention, socially unaware old white men bound by the pretense of being fake lawyers yet knowing no law, no exquisite Latin terminology, they are inexplicably compelled to quibble over minutia, squabble over triflings, and bicker like those who value their backyards far too highly without even knowing the difference between an easement and an alleyway. At this very moment, you have entered the heart of the law offices of quibble, squabble, and bicker. Let's get started.
Welcome to another edition of the Law Offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker on this September 8th, 2021. The school year has started, Labor Day has ended, and you get another episode of our show with Greg, Brendan, and myself. I am Matt, and we will be doing our podcast because our guest has not arrived today. Apparently there was a mix-up. So we're going to go right into our client for today. And we're not right into it, but I'll tell you what the client is. We do have a sponsor. So the client for today is Tradition is Poison. And we'll talk into that very soon. But who has a sponsor today? Greg, you have the sponsor,
strong.
Right?
It's a little strong, isn't it? Tradition is Poison.
Well, we'll get into that after these words from our fake sponsor.
Are you tired of your favorite oldies being canceled because of their grossly inappropriate lyrics? Wouldn't it be nice to have a collection of these songs before they're pulled from the internet forever? K-Tet Records proudly presents Cancel Me, Cancel You, featuring such classics as Instant Pussy, Baby It's Cold Outside of My Pants, Statutory Ape, Unchained Felony, Rabbi Jethro and the No Bacon Boys, Kosher Corn Pone, The Funny Uncles, It's Raining Nieces, The Domestic Squabbles, I'll See You in the ICU, The Smashing Bumpkins, Thank Heaven for Little Squirrels, The Occidentals, Ramalama Ching Chong, The Lady Singers with Club Me Caveman, Fresh Little Panties, Old Enough to Bleed, and Michael Jackson, Where the Boys Are. Act now.
And what is the name of this collection again?
Cancel Me, Cancel You.
Cancel me, cancel you.
Gripping. I'm going to go out and buy it right now.
I think
available at Walmart and online at Amazon.
No, it's only available on TV. It's only a TV offer. Not available in stores.
It's available from Amazon, picked up from Greg's front stoop where everybody else gets free presents from. Because everything he orders gets stolen from his, his stoop.
My last package was on my stoop, and it was there, unmolested, unstolen.
Well, that's good to hear.
I know.
That's very nice. So, but just to warn everybody, the guest could show up. The publicist is in the middle of trying to track him down. She's at an event right now, so she's doing something important.
We think he might be in the emergency room. We're not really sure.
We're worried.
But stay tuned.
He's traveling at the speed of light. So hopefully he can get all of his superhuman activities done and join us later. So anyway, right now we're going to talk about how tradition is poison. Now, Greg, you disagree with that statement. So
I just thought it was so strong. Some traditions are fine.
Okay,
good traditions like not murdering people. Thou shalt not kill.
Well, is that a tradition, or that's just like a standard activity that you don't do?
I think it's wired into humans. It's a tradition. Most people think it's bad to kill people and steal from them. And
well, maybe we should go into like a definition of what tradition is. So, tradition is the transmission of customs or beliefs from generation to generation, or the fact of being passed on in this way. Also, there's another definition for theology, which is a doctrine believed to have divine authority, though not in the scriptures. So we have a religious connotation of tradition, and then we have a general connotation of traditions, which is transmission of customs or beliefs from generation to generation. So you're saying is that not killing somebody is a belief
or a custom? I think that I think that it's strong, but I have a different. I differ from our my co-counsel Greg, in that I believe that traditions have a role, and that culture has a role, and those sorts of things provide a certain amount of cohesiveness within smaller subunits of people. I think "thou shalt not kill" isn't tradition so much as like a general rule. But other traditions like let's say, I don't know, Thanksgiving, let's say, that's a tradition. You in America, you get together and you overeat on on whatever Thursday it is in
and you argue
November, and you argue with your family. But somehow even that part of it, even the negative aspect, is kind of like cute and kind of entertaining, and you laugh about it later. There's a certain amount of tradition that I think gives life some sort of purpose in an otherwise meaningless void that we live in.
So why would tradition be poison then?
It can be poison. There's bad traditions.
Like what, Greg?
Slavery. The institution of slavery for hundreds of years.
Is that a tradition?
It was in the South. They went to war.
Is that a tradition or is it a business?
Well, it became their tradition. They thought it was beyond a business. Most of those guys who fought in the Civil War for the South couldn't even afford a slave. They were poor guys who never would buy a slave in their life. They couldn't afford one, but they loved the tradition. What do they always call it? Our peculiar tradition. Isn't that what they called it?
So it wasn't necessarily a business for the owners of the slaves. So the slaves were more like toasters. It was just something you owned. It was like passed on from generation to generation. Is that what you're suggesting, Greg, that slaves were toasters?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's exactly what I meant.
They were toasters. And they had different settings. Like some slaves were darker than others.
Don't do it, Brandon.
You started it with toaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wasn't going into settings.
Okay. Well, sorry.
It's just meant to be an object that's sold. It's what came to mind.
It definitely was a business. It's a very
I could have said a cotton gin.
It was a business, but it became a tradition in the South. And even these poor guys who never could own a slave were willing to fight for their tradition. Like, how dare you tell us we can't have slaves in our country in the South?
Right. Like racism theoretically can be, I think you could consider it in certain parts of the country a tradition. Like I had a relatively good friend of mine who was a minister in Arkansas, and he was raised very racist, and it was a part of his culture, and it was a part of what him and his dad talked about, and his uncles. And when they watched TV, they made comments about the various people of various ethnics on the TV. And he said it was a thing that bound them together. They laughed about it. It was a common thing they held. And it wasn't until he got to college that he realized how utterly fucked up that was. And it took him a while to kind of like, I don't know, sort of reject the tradition to the point where, he wasn't sitting there watching TV and hearing his dad and his uncles in his head. But that's kind of a tradition that's poison.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that it becomes not just the tradition, though, it becomes something ingrained in your skull, is what it sounds like.
Well, isn't that what tradition is? Tradition is ingrained in you. Isn't that kind of part of tradition?
What traditions do you have that are ingrained in you, Greg?
Well, I don't do it much anymore because I don't have a family, but I go home to see my family. But I'm an atheist, but I still love Christmas in theory. I love the idea that everyone is fake nice to each other for a week, and people, whatever, give each other presents. It's like everyone's trying to be nice for a week. I like it because I think Jesus is not the reason for the season. He's the least reason for the season. I just like Christmas as a secular holiday. I think it's a fun holiday, but I don't like the music.
Why is Jesus the least reason for the season?
Because I could give two shits about that part of Christmas. Like, today we remember this little baby who was born, who's this mythological creature. I don't care. I like what Christmas has become, where everyone's kind of nice to each other for a week, and people can relax.
And so you're saying Jesus wasn't a baby?
He was a baby, but he became a mythological creature, like a griffin.
Okay.
Or a kraken.
Or a turkey.
He's like a kraken.
Or a turducken. But I mean, there's certainly arguments that one could make that Jesus never really existed, but that's not this client.
I don't believe myself. I think he was a man. I think the Romans have enough accounts of him. The Roman accounts. There was this guy, Jesus of Nazareth, I think. But who knows? You're right.
No, well, that's a whole nother client. But be that as it may, the interesting question that you pose is, so there's the tradition of Christmas, which is Jesus and, he was born and all that kind of stuff, which is a tradition. And then there's the tradition of, like what you were saying, which is the secular aspect of it, which is, getting together and giving gifts and being nice, or as you said, pretending to be nice. But then there's a whole nother subset, which is the tradition that preceded Jesus being somehow magically born in December, which he technically wasn't. He was born in the summer. But in order to co-opt the traditions of people that the Christians were trying to indoctrinate, they turned the winter solstice celebration into Jesus's birth.
It wasn't like the Germanic barbarians, right? The Yule. The German barbarians had their own little holiday.
It's not Yule, it's Y'all.
Y'all.
Y'all, no, that's down here.
That was the southern Mediterranean. It's the Y'all log. Y'all go get a log, put it on the fire.
Did you guys have that where you lived? The Yule log on TV every Christmas Eve? Where your a TV station would just show a log burning for 4 hours. Local TV
They have
station.
that on Netflix where you can actually watch a fire burning for like the Christmas period. It's actually, it's kind of handy to have. We had that playing last year here at the house.
Nice.
We had the burning log with no muss, because the one drawback to our house is we don't have a fireplace, and so because we got into our house pretty quick, otherwise we would have been much more picky about it. At least my wife would have been. I'm incredibly fine not having a fireplace ever, because that means never having to make a fire, which I have no desire to do.
And then clean out the flue and all the shit you got to do.
Yeah, no one ever cleans out flues, though.
I did.
I have a fireplace, and I'm in Florida, and I love that damn thing. I can't wait until the 3 days of the year it gets cold enough that I can make a fire in that thing.
I did like making fires a lot in the fireplace. I was a little pyro. I didn't never burn down anything, but I love making fires and just crinkling up.
They're so much more than they're cracked up to. I mean, they're less than they're cracked up to be, because they never really get the place that warm for very long, and you're always stoking the damn thing to keep it going. So you have to get a lot more wood to keep it going.
Not if you make it right. If you make a good fire, it'll
still burn out.
But I think both of you are missing the point. The thing about, at least here, because I wasn't worried about I was going to die from cold, and that's why I lit the fire. The fire was the ambient sound and watching the flames and sitting in front of it with my two boys poking it. I love that. My boys love poking the fire with the poker and poking the log and moving stuff around. That's really the experience of having a fire. I don't know what that has to do with tradition.
Well, you created a tradition with your kids by doing that. But we had a fireplace in our last house, so they were younger when we were at that house, so they had plenty of time to poke that fire. At our new house, no fireplace. Best of both worlds, in my opinion. So like that, because basically all the kids now are old and moving out anyway, so I don't need to create no more traditions. But I do have a particular tradition I do with my kids that I've done since they've been very young, which is on their birthdays, I take them out individually for dinner and a movie, just them and me. So it's like this solo time that I create with kids, and now even as adults I still do that. Although now with a couple of the older ones, I've changed it to they don't get the movie now because they go their own damn movies. We take that money towards a nicer restaurant, and then I go and teach them how to drink beer and booze and stuff.
And do karaoke.
Right. That's right.
That's a nice tradition.
It's like a new aspect to the tradition that has started. Yeah. Right. But traditions can be poison. I think it's because it gets people in negative mindsets to certain cases. Like you've got this whole issue regarding Christmas, Greg, in terms of where it comes from. Right? Now, according to my ex-wife, the tradition of tinsel on the tree comes from when the Druids used to disembowel their enemies, and they would place the intestines upon the tree, and that's where that particular tradition comes from.
We should bring that tradition back.
I've been trying to get my ex to come on the show one of these days. She just has other things to do, which are probably much more important than listen to us yammer at each other.
What if we
But-
do a new tradition where every year we disembowel like people who don't believe in Christ, the infidels, and we strew their guts on a tree? That would be nice to bring back.
But Greg, that would be you.
You're
well,
right.
not
It
to
would be.
mention, I don't think that was ever a tradition because the Druids weren't disemboweling people for Jesus; they were disemboweling people for the wood
sorcery or whatever.
spirits or whatever the fuck they were doing.
Yeah,
Well,
that
that
was
was
their
their
tradition. So
It
that's
had
how
nothing to do with Christianity.
allegedly. I'm just wondering where the crossover began, where somebody said at one point, "All right, I'm tired of sticking intestines on the tree. Let's put on some
Yeah,
colored paper."
it starts to smell after a few days.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's really a bad option. Any sort of meat product on a tree over time. It's not
And
good.
like, how much do they clean it before they stick it on the tree? Well, maybe, I'm assuming back then the trees were outside and not in their caves or wherever the Druids lived in the woods.
So were the
I-
Christmas ornaments like the testicles?
I think-
of these sacrifices.
Or the heads.
Christmas ornaments.
Could be the heads of the enemies.
I
Maybe
think
that's
your
where
ex-wife
ornaments
needs
come
to be-
from.
I think she needs to be fact checked. I find that really hard to swallow.
Greg's wife needs to be fact checked.
No, your ex-wife needs to be fact checked. Gabrielle needs to be fact checked because I don't believe that that's what tinsel comes from.
I wouldn't be surprised. It makes sense to me in my gut.
Well, yeah, the funny thing is, it was her sending me that card way back in the day, which made me go, I think I should marry this woman. This is before we were married that she told me this story.
I mean,
I was like, that's
that's
the sense of humor or the sense of a sensibility that I can relate to.
And then on your first date,
I
did
get
you
it.
take you to Texas Chainsaw Massacre and you fell in love?
No,
Like, oh, I love
we
this
actually
princess.
did our own massacre. Greg.
She's a psycho.
So maybe that should have been the tip off, right?
Yeah. See?
I don't know. Well, anyway, at the time she was in a different part of the country, and nobody ever sent me cards, so I just latched onto it like any good stalker would as a way to get married to somebody. Anyway, speaking of marriage, there's a tradition which you wonder like why it still exists, why marriage is still in operation. I think we touched on this in an earlier episode
Tax
at one point,
breaks.
didn't we?
Tax breaks?
Well, I guess, but there was a point in time where obviously, which wasn't a good point in time, that your significant other was your chattel and like they were your property.
Yeah.
And so that was the contract that you had in place, is like, I get to own this person.
oh,
And
But you'd be well paid for it with a dowry of 4 pigs.
right, but they're still your property, right?
Yes.
So, but then eventually they started realizing that these people can communicate and have their own thoughts and talk, so maybe we shouldn't treat them like property anymore. And yet the marriage tradition has continued to where they're not property, but now we're each other's property, because that's where the whole, he's my man, she's my woman thing kind of comes from.
Yeah.
So is
Well,
that
I mean-
something that has poisoned societies across the world, having that concept in place?
I think the tradition of lack of being able to get a divorce without being ostracized, that was a horrible tradition. And I think so many people are happier that it's like, okay, if this isn't working out, we can get a divorce. But for hundreds of years, it's like you might have made a mistake, married someone who's horrible, and you would live this life of misery. You just couldn't get divorced, or you'd be an outcast.
Let
So
me
I'm
ask you
glad
a
that
question,
tradition
Greg.
went away. Yeah.
Did your parents get divorced?
No, one of the few people
Okay.
I know whose parents were never
All right.
divorced.
My parents were divorced. It was a horrible thing. Now, my father
know.
was abusive and all that. So,
That's what
but
I mean.
all I'm saying is that I think you're glorifying what's really weird as the tradition isn't whether or not people can get divorced or whether it's traditionally people were shunned that they did, because those are all religious things. The whole idea of, you really start to go down a weird path, right? Like, what is marriage? Marriage is you're going to be connected and stay with this person, and they're your
Battle.
mate. They're your no. I'm not
kidding.
getting into all that. Whether it's another guy or it's a girl or whatever, you're faithful to one another, and that's a tradition. And there's a certain aspect to that tradition, which is probably a good survival tactic, like as opposed to being just, running around and screwing anything and no one cares about any of that sort of stuff. But at the same time, is it really? Is monogamy
it necessary?
Is monogamy a tradition, or is it a survival strategy, or what the hell is it? Is it religious?
I've heard there's many books that say like ancient, cavemen, whatever. They just they didn't have that concept, and then we just developed it. Maybe because it was more stable for society, so you could raise children in a better environment.
So that's what I'm saying. So it became a tradition, but maybe at a certain point it wasn't just religious. It was just like, you know what? That cave guy who keeps running around screwing all the girls, he's kind of an asshole. And let's everybody, pick somebody and that's it. And then you raise your kids, and it provided a certain stability within the community. So I think sometimes, I guess what I'm winding here to is sometimes I think traditions are based on things that we learned early on were good for us to do or not do, because it was better for us as a culture.
I think so.
I think a lot of the dietary stuff in the Bible is ridiculous now, but back then it was probably important.
Yeah. Don't eat pork because you'll get trichinosis because you don't have refrigeration. But now we have refrigeration.
Right.
So.
That's right. And don't eat crustaceans or ostriches.
Ostriches. That was one of the.
Yeah.
Ostriches
is in there too. People forget about that one.
They even knew what ostriches were in the Holy Land. I think
Matt is right now totally full of shit. Ostriches were not included.
And dodos. Don't eat dodo birds.
I'm pretty certain about it. I'm not 100% certain about it, but I think I remember when I was reading the Bible that I was taken aback by some of the things you weren't allowed to eat. I'm pretty sure ostrich, maybe even it wasn't camel. I think camel was okay to eat, but I think beavers? Ostrich, you weren't allowed to eat it for whatever reason. So I'm gonna just do a quick search in Google. What can't you eat in the Bible?
What about labradoodles? Does that
they didn't exist back then?
I think they would have said yes. No labradoodles.
Well, I just think the Middle East didn't even know what ostriches were. Isn't that like African? Did they know about African animals?
Maybe.
So maybe you couldn't eat animals that chewed the cud or that had cloven hoofs, like pigs and horses. You couldn't eat fish without fins and scales. What fish doesn't have fins or scales? Like an eel?
An eel.
Don't cows have hooves and chew cud?
Right.
They could eat cows, though, choose. Brisket.
Well, this is according to, what's this, from Britannica.com.
Oh.
So let's just see if I can get a better thing to look at. So this is spelled,
I know you can't eat a horse.
You can't eat horses, blood of any animal, shellfish, clams, oysters, shrimps, and all other living things that creep, and those fowl enumerated in the Bible like vultures, hawks, owls, and herons.
Oh, how did owls get involved in all that? Owls are kind of noble creatures, in my opinion.
So
maybe that's why you shouldn't eat an owl, because it's a noble creature. Okay,
well, I could, but you said that was because they were creepy or something. I thought.
Well, no, so you can't eat, you can't eat anything creepy. No, it's things that creep.
No centipedes.
Right. No
I wouldn't eat a centipede.
Probably
or
no
a bug.
snakes.
If you were hungry enough, you would.
I want the direct.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because it's spelled out apparently in Leviticus.
I mean, it's almost like that famous Pulp Fiction argument where they're like, so you won't eat the flesh of a pig because it's filthy, but dogs are filthy. But I can't remember the argument, to be honest. But
I don't remember any talk about.
There's
it was with John Travolta and Samuel Jackson. We're having a whole discussion about and Travolta's talking about debate. He eats pork because it tastes good.
Yeah, but
and he's right, because pork does taste good.
Yeah, and if you have refrigeration, it's very safe, and you won't die. So maybe that's it. Tradition is poison if every generation doesn't reevaluate the tradition. I mean, some traditions started at the time. It did make sense, like not eating pork. But if you just like for thousands of years, people just say this is the tradition.
And
I
you
guess
can't
I'm
eat
going
it.
to keep following it.
So here's from
that's
Leviticus.
stupid. That could be
You can't
poisonous.
eat something that has a hoof or is cloven-footed. Choose the cud. Whatever parts the hoof and is cloven-footed and chews the cud, you may eat. But among those that chew the cud or part the hoof, you shall not eat these. The camel, because it chews the cud but does not part the hoof, it is unclean to you. And the rock badger, because it chews the cud but does not part the hoof, is unclean to you. So no, I hope you haven't been eating rock badgers recently.
So it's okay to eat camel, you said? Or it's not okay?
No, camel's not okay either. The pig, because it parts the hoof and is cloven-footed but does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. So there's some
what
interesting.
About the cow? They eat meat beef.
I think it's, but it doesn't have a cloven hoof.
Oh, they don't?
No.
No.
Maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't looked at a.
What about a horse? Why can't you eat a horse then? You said you can't eat a horse.
Because I don't think it chews the cud.
But it doesn't have a cloven
chew
hoof.
the cud.
Yeah, I think it's like if it chews the cud and doesn't have a cloven hoof, you can eat it. But if it chews the cud and has a cloven hoof, you can't eat it, which is the camel. And the rock badger. And all I know is that I haven't given enough attention to the rock badger in my life.
Is that a B-52 song?
No, the rock badger is a rock badger. The rock badger is more commonly known as the rock hyrax, and it looks like kind of a fat fucking squirrel without a tail. I'm not sure why they picked this dumb animal.
Because maybe they were like out amongst the boulders and the rocks, and somebody was really hungry.
Yeah.
And somebody saw a guy eating a rock badger, and he goes, "No, this is against the laws."
Google that
you
shit.
guys
Look at
ever,
it.
you guys know about the traditions of Hasidic Jews? Like in New York City, there's whole areas of Hasidic Jews, and they have their traditions where they can't turn on the light switch on Saturday, on the Sabbath. They pay kids.
If it's working.
I know. And that's a ridiculous, stupid tradition to follow. It's like, this is ridiculous. We're not working by flicking a light switch just because we want to be in the light. I know in the old days you had to build a fire.
It's got to do with like not exerting yourself because you're giving your time to God during the Sabbath.
I know, but a light switch now, we have light switches that you're not exerting shit by going bleak, turning on a light switch.
If they're making that noise when they're turning on a light switch, there's definitely something wrong with them anyway.
Well, they're allowed to talk.
They're either going bleak, bleak, bleak.
They can do that all they want. Talmudic law says you can make all the robot noises you want on Sabbath. You can go bleak, 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 bleak.
That's because it was written by robot rabbis.
Pardon my ignorance, but what if they can't turn on a light switch? What can they do? What do they do on this day that is so restrictive? They can't
do a lot of walking.
Walking?
They do a lot of walking on that day. Yes.
Yeah. Brendan, do you know that my father,
they walk to temple and they walk home. They can eat, but that's I don't know if they can make the food. They can eat what they already have or something.
But then they wouldn't mind if Gentiles. This is a thing, Brendan. My dad grew up in the 40s and 30s and 40s in New York City, and the Hasidics would hire all the kids in the neighborhood. Like they give them a nickel, like come on in and turn our oven on, and then turn our light switch on for us. Here's a nickel. So they didn't care if that Gentile damned his soul.
Shifty bastards, basically.
Well, of course, they don't care if the goyim go to Sheol.
Sheol.
They don't care about that because they're not the chosen people. The Jews are the chosen people.
I get it, but can they get busy? Like you can walk around and then you come home and then just get busy on it.
I don't know. I never read up on all that stuff when I was getting raised. My mother's calling. I gotta ask her.
Let's ask her. I want to know. Let's put her on.
The air?
I don't know that I could get her on the air. She'll be the guest.
Your mom's great. I would love her to be a guest.
I just want to know if it's okay for Jews to get it on, like do the nasty on Sabbath. Is that okay?
I think so. It's not work.
Well, I guess it just depends upon if it's considered a sacrifice to God or not. I know.
I mean, it's kind of work, Greg. I mean,
sometimes it is. You're right.
I'm saying as you get older, it gets to be kind of work.
Although in Genesis it says, "Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, and as I gave you the green plants, I give you everything. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood," which means you can't eat like the child of an animal with it. So you're not allowed to do that. And for your lifeblood, I will require a reckoning from every beast. I will require it from man. From his fellow man, I will require a reckoning for the land. I don't know what the hell this means. Anyway, well, I don't really getting. I'm not a Bible scholar, so I'm not going to like dissect these things. I just wanted something literal, like you cannot eat ostriches. That's really the main thing I was looking for.
Well, you never found it, did you? Because you made that up.
Didn't find it.
You didn't find it.
But
well, you can't eat herons and owls and vultures apparently, but that's not from there either. Somebody else said that.
Well, vultures make sense. They're filthy, carrion eating creatures. They're like rats. That's like eating a rat. Yeah.
I'm gonna put can you eat ostriches in the Bible?
I bet ostriches is great. And there's no reason not to eat an ostrich now. So we should reevaluate these stupid old traditions that were smart at the time. But just for example, the fact that like marriage is forever.
All right, I knew I wasn't wrong. As stated, according to Jewish law, the ostrich cannot be eaten, and thus it must be assumed that the ostrich was bred in Jewish households, mainly to prepare tools and decorations from its eggs and feathers, and perhaps as pets, as known from later sources.
Yes. Now, is this just one?
Wait a minute. Ancient Jews had ostriches as pets, but they can't flip a light switch. I don't know. This is not really. An ostrich seems like a real high maintenance pet.
Yeah, that's work. What if it poops on your carpet? You're not allowed to clean it up because that's work.
Well, yeah, especially if you've got it like flying around in your house. Yeah,
so on Sabbath, your ostrich poops all over your living room. You can't clean it up. You got to hire a Gentile for a nickel.
Hire a Gentile for a nickel?
Yeah.
Well, why for a nickel, Greg? Why not for $1?
There's inflation now. Yeah, you're right.
$5 to turn on my light switch.
My dad did it for a nickel.
Here's the sentence. Here's the sentence I'm reading in an actual article I found online. Pigs and rock badgers may be unclean, but they are not sinful.
Well, that's good to know that the rock badgers are not out there committing sins.
Yeah, they don't have to go to Sheol.
Right.
I'm going to start a campaign about eating rock badgers.
You guys know that movie, All Rock Badgers Go to Heaven? Remember that one?
Oh, I did see that with my kids. That was a DreamWorks, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All rock
came out after
Go to Heaven.
Came out after the guy with the magical trench coat or whatever.
Yeah, I think the guy who does our intros was the guy who played the part of the rock badger in that movie, actually. Colin Metzger.
I thought it was Gilbert Gottfried was the voice of the rock badger.
Probably.
I told you Jews not to eat me. That is my horrible Gilbert Gottfried impersonation. Anyway, so how do we get into? We were talking about tradition as poison. So we were talking about this case where tradition is literally poison in the sense if you're eating food that is bad for you, then you could get poisoned. Well, that's like tradition is preventing you from being poisoned. Maybe that should be
but
more
not
of the
anymore.
client.
It's irrelevant.
But not anymore.
It's refrigerated.
Right.
Well,
Greg
yeah.
made an extra.
I think, but now, but people eat chicken that's not fully cooked, and that's like poison. So,
well, that's an accident. You don't want to eat chicken that's not fully cooked.
No, you don't want to
seek that out.
Most people.
What about steak tartare, though? I never understood steak tartare. I never had it. It seems dangerous.
I've had it. It's fantastic.
But isn't it dangerous though? You're eating raw meat. It's like.
You ever eat oysters?
Yeah, but fish is different.
But you're eating.
But oysters aren't a fish.
Well, I wasn't even going to get into that. But I love oysters, and one of the things that really freaked my wife out about it, because of course eating raw oysters is dangerous and all that.
Yeah.
So I'll go down to the seafood place and I'll get oysters, and I haven't done it in a while. I need to do that again, maybe this weekend. And I'll get the oyster, and I'm telling her, she's like, well, how do you know? And I said, well, if the thing is open, then you don't eat it.
Oh yeah.
If it's closed, then the thing is still alive, and so you have to kind of shuck it. So you have to pry it open, and the reason you have to pry it open is because it's holding on because it's still alive. So then when you pop it open, you're eating it, and then she's like, so it's alive when you're eating it? And I'm like, yeah.
That's how Brendan likes to eat most of his food.
That's kind of weird.
If I could, but I'm just saying,
If you could, hold that calf down.
I'm just gonna bite its neck.
I need to gnaw on its
it's
leg
not-
for a while.
If you're into the raw oysters, it's not even that it's just raw, like a piece of tuna on a piece of sushi. That fish it's long since dead. When you throw an oyster back, you're eating a live thing.
The thing I've
So it's
never understood
fresh.
about eating oysters, which is how I was taught to eat them, which is that if they're fresh oysters, you don't even chew them, you just swallow them.
I know.
And I'm
it's
like, I
gross.
don't even
Yes.
understand the point of that. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
why don't you just like hock a loogie back in your throat, and it's pretty much the same
But
thing.
why don't you just be like one of those gooses that becomes faux gras and they just shove a funnel down your throat?
It's like, what's the point of eating something if you're not actually chewing it?
yeah, I don't get that either. I
That
never
never
got
made sense. I mean, I like oyster subs, like fried oysters. Those are really good to me. But
Do you chew ice cream?
you can
Yeah.
suck on ice cream. Do you suck on oysters?
Yes. That's
You suck on
Absolutely
oysters?
swallow it.
So you are not only an oyster shucker, but you're an oyster sucker.
And a
I'm
swallow.
a shucker sucker and a swallower.
You're
I
an
shuck,
outlet
I
sucker.
suck, I swallow. I'm gonna get a T-shirt that says that.
There's the T-shirt. That's the next T-shirt.
We've
I
been
shuck,
looking for
I
slogans.
Suck, I swallow.
I have one of my sons trying to put together categories for videos to create from the podcast, and I wanted him to look for T-shirt slogans. So we'll see if he gets anything done.
I think there could be. I think one of those things, because of course it costs nothing to have a million T-shirt options. I think we should just have an ungodly amount of T-shirt options.
And if we just had
Because-
somebody who was willing to actually pay attention to the store, unlike me, who just neglects it horribly. Because everybody, if you didn't know this, we do have a merchandise store that you can find on our website, which is at www.qsblaw.org. There's our plug for the website for today. There is a store there. There is some merchandise you can buy. Right now we've got T-shirts which just have our faces on them. So you need to get all 3 T-shirts.
Nobody wants that.
Do we have our merchandise store listed below us here on YouTube?
No, we don't have anything listed below us on YouTube because I don't know how to do that.
Is
Because
it
people
that
should,
picture?
I don't know how to do.
like and subscribe.
Yeah, I don't know how to do. Ring the bell, people. Subscribe.
Yes, please
Can I
Get
ring the bell.
notifications of new episodes. Like everybody doesn't know this already who's on YouTube. Why do we have to repeat that?
I don't
So,
know this stuff.
I just
don't
want to
know
get
how
back
like
to the birds you can't eat in the Bible. Because, again, I can't find ostriches. So this is my last attempt at
But
proving
geez.
myself right, and I will lose this attempt. So this is a list of names that have been translated, Hebrew names. So you have the cormorant, the eagle, the gull, the hawk, the heron, the hoopoe, and I don't know what that is, the red and black kite, the osprey, the owl. All horned, screech, little white, and desert owls are unacceptable.
They're all
Raven,
predators.
stork, vulture, and black vulture. Bats are also mentioned, though biologically these are mammals rather than birds. So there you go. And there are some winged swarming things that can be eaten, insects, but many others are prohibited. But due to
And crickets.
uncertainty about her Hebrew insect names, they recommend that all insects be considered unclean.
That's
So,
Yeah, because they're fucking bugs.
But you notice all the birds were like predator birds. They were all birds of prey. I think almost every bird you mentioned was a bird of prey.
is a seagull a bird of prey?
Oh no!
I guess it
Oh,
preys
they're
on
seagull.
fish, I suppose.
They're just scavenger rats.
I mean,
like rats.
Is
So,
a raven a bird of prey?
I don't know what ravens do. Do they eat?
What do ravens
Ravens-
do? They go to work.
ravens.
They like take dictation.
They say nevermore a lot.
Right.
Apparently, they won't shut up.
I mean,
Drive
they'll
you crazy.
eat whatever. I mean, they'll eat. They're not hunters like owls or hawks or they're not
Yeah,
birds of
hunters.
prey.
But a lot of them were hunters. You said osprey, eagle, hawk.
So
it's like,
in the
those are
bird community, Greg, which bird would you identify the most with? The kiwi?
the dodo because it's extinct.
You're not extinct though. There's
I should be though.
there's definitely one of you still in existence.
Yeah, I know, but not for long. I'm heading that way.
What's that supposed to mean, Greg?
Look at the way I live. I've been chain smoking every episode you see.
I've
me
been
on.
chain smoking and drinking my gallon of whiskey. What are you drinking today, Greg?
I'm drinking fake whiskey now. I discovered at Safeway.
Fake whiskey. It's like powdered whiskey. You just add water to it.
No, they have this thing at Safeway now where it's 21% alcohol wine that is flavored like tequila or vodka or bourbon. And it really kind of does.
Did you just call it alcohol wine?
It's 21% alcohol. Sorry, alcohol proof or 42% proof. 42 proof wine.
Alcohol proof wine.
Well, you know what it says in the bottle? Strange enough, it says grape wine, like as opposed to dandelion wine. You don't have to say grape.
Is it well?
Well, sake is rice wine.
Like, I know, but for the most part. Sorry, what?
Well, time out. Let me see if I can straighten this out.
Please.
So, is it malt liquor that's flavored like things? Because I know that if you go to
it's very fortified.
The gas station, they have here in Florida anyway, because liquor stores are separate from other stores. You can't buy
like here in Oregon. It's like that.
Is it like that in Oregon?
Yeah.
You have to go to a liquor store. You can buy beer and wine at a grocery store, but you can't buy liquor. You have to go to a liquor store.
Exactly.
Okay, so here in Florida. But what they'll do is in like a gas station or your local, Florida bodega, they'll have this bullshit like malt liquor flavored like whiskey, malt liquor flavored like tequila, but it's malt liquor.
And it's like 18% beer.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, really strong. It's like Old English 800 kind of shit. But it doesn't.
Show you guys this? I got to show you guys. Their graphic designers are brilliant for these companies.
Hobble
so this
Creek.
Is their fake whiskey. Doesn't it look like a bottle of whiskey? It's called Hobble Creek.
Blended.
And then their tequila is called
Special Select.
Their tequila is called Veracruz, and it says Autentico. It looks just like a bottle of tequila, and then the vodka is better.
So this is the tradition that is poison for you, because this is poison that's killing you. I actually have to interrupt, guys, because I just got a text from my mother saying that she needs to go to the hospital. That's why she was calling.
Oh, good Lord.
So I want to thank everybody. I'm sorry for ending things so abruptly for our client today, which is tradition is poison. And the tradition that's not poison at the moment is basically taking care of your mother. So
unprofessional, man.
Go take care of your mom.
I know it is. It's sad.
What about our podcast?
I know it's much more important.
Where's your priorities?
Exactly. Anyway, so for those who've been paying attention, I'm not going to kiss her for you. She'll think that's creepy.
Come on, I love your
mom.
So
this has been the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker, and hopefully everything will be okay. So
bye.
So long,
bye,
long, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Go, Matt.
Bye.
Go.
Bye.
Your consultation with the law offices of Quibble, Squabble, and Bicker has ended. You may pay your retainer at www.qsblaw.org. Please exit to the right of the water cooler and grab a candy from the front desk. We hope to see you again soon, but you need to leave now. I said leave. Why don't they even listen? Get out! Get out!